Good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar session on college admissions organized by SoCal Style and HyperConnect. To begin with, I'd like to walk you through the flow of this session. To start, I would like to introduce Hasani, who will deliver the welcome speech and set the tone for the evening. Following that, we will hear from our esteemed speaker, Ms. Ati Natarajan, with over 15 years of experience mentoring students in college admissions and career development. Ms. Natarajan has helped countless students gain admission to top universities, including Ivy League institutions, and we are so fortunate to have her here to share her insight. After the presentation, there will be a Q&A session where Ms. Ati Natarajan will address your questions. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them out in the chat box during the session, and I will make sure that they are addressed during the Q&A segment. Finally, we will conclude the webinar with a vote of thanks by Darshana. Let's begin this exciting session by inviting Hasni to deliver her welcome speech.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Style and SoCal Tamil, I am delighted to welcome you all to this insightful webinar on college admissions. It is truly wonderful to guide us through it with clarity and confidence. It is my honor to introduce our esteemed speaker, Ms. Ati Natarajan. Ms. Ati Natarajan from HyperConnect brings over 15 years of experience mentoring students in undergraduate and graduate college admissions and career development. Her passion and dedication have helped countless students worldwide identify the right fit colleges and pursue careers that align with their strengths and aspirations. As a UCLA certified college counselor, Ms. Natarajan has reviewed numerous college applications and guided students to success in securing placements at prestigious institutions, from large public universities to Ivy League schools. Her wealth of experience, deep knowledge, and practical approach make her an invaluable resource for anyone navigating the college admissions process. Today's webinar is an opportunity to gain insights from Ms. Natarajan's extensive experience and learn how to approach college admissions strategically and confidently. I encourage you all to actively participate, ask questions, and make the most of this session. Once again, thank you for joining us, and without further ado, let's welcome Ms. Ati Natarajan to take the stage.
Thank you, Hasani and Dia and Ms. Kartika for the warm welcome and the opportunity. Super excited to meet all of you virtually. And like, Hasani and Dia were saying before, I want this to be very useful for all of you as much as it is useful for me, right? So feel free to ask questions, wherever in the high school journey your kids may be, or even wherever in the education journey your kids may be, right? So ask any number of questions, right? This session is meant for you, and I want you to walk out of this session, with more clarity than, in which you came in, right? So, hopefully we all achieve this goal today. And without further ado, let me share my screen. So when I'm sharing my screen, I will not be able to see, chat or any of the raised hands or reactions. So that's where I'll request Dia for help. Thank you, Dia, again. So sharing my screen here now. Okay, hopefully everybody can see my screen. I'm assuming
Yes.
that's a yes. Okay, perfect.
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah, perfect. So like Hasni was mentioning, I am a UCLA certified college counselor with tons of experience working with students and families and putting them ultimately in their dream school, right? And of course, Ivies and Tier 1 colleges are extremely competitive. How do we navigate that journey? And for me, the most fulfilling part of my work is really untapping the potential and capability of every student, because like young students are like this raw power and energy, and just the opportunity to mold that energy and bring it to a better future is a very humbling experience and also a very rewarding experience. So I thank all the families that have worked with me so far, and I look forward to working with more families in the future. So I want to start with, a statistic, and this is from, as you can see, the source, the National Center for Education Statistics, which is a government body that does, like every year publication on how many students enter high school, every year aspiring to go to college. So the latest study is there are 16 million students in the U.S., like in the high school from 9th to 12th. And then, 3 million from international wanting to come to the US every year, who apply to colleges every year, right? So that's kind of like the large competition pool that the high schoolers are operating under to get into the limited number of seats in the college of their dreams, right? So just statistically speaking. And every year, parents and students live in a lot of confusion, right? And some of the typical questions that arise in our mind, and some of the questions that I oftentimes hear are like, is my GPA a good GPA? Do I take SAT or ACT? Or do I take both and then just submit the best of the two scores, right? Like how do I best use my time, right? Which extracurricular do I work in? Where can I go to get all the scholarship money in the world? Which major is the easiest major to get into? Maybe I can backdoor my way in, right? So things like that, right? So every year, these sort of confusions and questions arise, and this is my attempt at showing that, we're at a crosswire, honestly, and that's how all parents and families feel like from grade 9 all the way through grade 12, and this is just a simplified representation of the million other things that kids have to do from grade 9 through 12, right? Be it how do you plan your academics for the next 4 years? Which clubs do I participate in? Do I start my own club, right? What AP courses do I take? Where do I go for dual enrollment? And what summer programs do I take? So it's just this never-ending bombardment of questions that start. Actually, technically nowadays from even grade 8 and grade 7 actually, because for those of you who don't know, UCs allow you to take any math and anything language other than English. So these two subjects for the A to G requirement, they do allow you to consider courses that you took from grade 7 onwards, right? So it kind of like the clock starts from grade 7, and it's just like never ending from that point on, if you will. So a lot of confusion, a lot of competition clearly, and so on and so forth, right? So this is the mindset of the students and the parents and the families as they enter into this, into the high school journey. With me so far? Any questions? Okay. Oh, any questions?
Not any that I can see.
Okay, perfect. So with this pool of applicants, right? Generally speaking, from a college side, right, like when these applications come in and, being a seasonal application reader, what have we seen at our end, when these applications come in is, the student's profile has, certain components that we look at, right? Of course, the first two big components that you can see here on the screen, your grades and courses. Grades matter, right? What courses you take matter within your academic setting. Like, for example, if your school offers, AP and IB courses and honors courses, there is more weightage given. Sorry about that. My dog is just going. She doesn't like somebody coming in, I guess. So there is weightage given to courses, that have, more rigor to it, right? So grades and courses, along with standardized tests, basically SAT, ACT, and for international students, TOEFL, Duolingo. So these things all kind of are bucketed into one big category, what is called as the academic filter, if you will, right? So grades do matter. Course rigor does matter heavily, right? And then the next biggest thing is extracurriculars. And extracurriculars are divided into, what you may high level call as from tier 1 all the way to tier 4 extracurricular. So just rule of thumb is tier 1, out of the 16 plus million, 19 million students in high school, maybe 0.05% attain the tier 1 category, right? And these are okay, I received this national and international award, I passed the USA Biology Olympiad, and I've participated in the International Biology Olympiad, right? So that's kind of like a rarity, right? So that would technically qualify as a tier 1, right? So tier 2 would be something like, like not at the like 0.05% of the entire crowd, but more like, okay, like I started this nonprofit which has grown into a national level thing, right? So that would be, like attainable, but not as hard as the tier 1. And then comes the tier 3 and the tier 4s. Tier 3, you could say something like, like MUN and speech and debate, and these are things that are still accessible and available in your schools, right? But they're not as prohibitive, or the barrier to entry into an MUN is still relatively less compared to, like starting a nonprofit and spreading it across the country, right? So that would be like a tier 3 activity. And a tier 4 that you see here, that would be like, oh, I'm a member of this club in my school, right? Nothing wrong with it. It's just that that's how colleges assess your application when the application comes in, right? And the percentages that I put in here, these are purely for ballpark, right? Like they don't go like, okay, this student, 35% weightage, and hence, like this is their score. It's not a weighted average score, and then ultimately everybody scores you, and then, like then your application gets, either picked or not picked. These are just approximate numbers, but generally speaking, like that's how they would categorize you, like you have to get good grades, you have to show academic rigor, and most colleges have an academic threshold which you have to cross to be even considered for the, like the next level, which should be, they'll be looking at your extracurriculars, they look at your essays, they look at your awards and honors and those sort of things, right? So like I said, essays, they make a huge component of your application, because like the previous one that you saw, the academics, it's relatively objective. Everybody is offered the same set of courses, relatively speaking, in the US. And essays are where you can, like really show who you are as a person, right? Like what uniqueness you have that has molded you into who you are, right? And there's a very popular saying in the college counseling industry that even very average kids get into phenomenal colleges with extraordinary essays, right? And it is true. We do see that time and time again. So do not discount the value of essays. They are a very crucial part of your application. But just know that your essay will not be read if you don't pass the academic threshold, right? So it's kind of like, yes, it's important, but you need to cross that barrier, the academic barrier, to be even considered for further reading and whatnot. Then comes the recommendations, and some colleges do interviews. Just know that recommendations, they won't really have so much of a weight until we have 2 applications which are like exactly the same and we don't know who to pick. That's really when recommendations can actually play a role. Otherwise, to be honest, like they don't really make a big impact on your application. So 2 exactly same applications, like phenomenal candidates, if the admissions officers are in a bind on which one to pick, then the student with the best recommendation, and more specific, and quality of recommendation matters rather than a generic recommendation. If the recommender has taken effort to be very, very specific about the student, that recommendation kind of like kicks in, and then that student gets picked, right? So that's why it's very important to actually identify the recommender who would do justice to the job that they're doing as well as to you, right? And interviews are more, conversations, that's why it's not here, but most colleges do offer interviews. Interviews are always held by the alumni of the college. Like, for example, I've held USC interviews, and what we're trying to see is, like fit of the student, just to see how they would thrive in the USC campus, right? Unless you do something like unethical or immoral during the interview, interviews can't really make or break your acceptance into the college, right? And in the alumni recommendation is kind of like that, but there's not a lot of heavy emphasis on the interview, and the recommendation from the interviewer. And then there's like this other holistic factors which nobody has any say, like we don't have any control. Like, for example, legacy admission is still a thing. and it'll always be a thing, right? Like if any family member, parents, siblings went to that college, the college gives preference to you because of legacy, right? And that's just like one thing. Endowment, that's another thing, right? So there are some other holistic factors that the colleges and campuses consider, which all of these things put together will what make a student's profile, right? So your academics and your standardized test scores, your extracurriculars from tier 1 all the way to tier 4, try to gravitate and navigate between the tier 1 and tier 2. Take a cognizant effort to not be within the tier 3 and tier 4 bucket. I know it's hard, but with meticulous planning, it's possible. And then, like in your senior year or towards the summer of your junior year, spend time on your essays. They can really make or break your applications, right? If you write a killer essay, you have just exponentially increased your chance of getting into that college. The other things are honestly not really in your control. So, just know that these are happening. And so if you don't get into the college that you applied to and you feel like you should have, just know that there are a lot of factors which are highly subjective, right? Which is the law of nature, so to speak, in the college admissions world. So that's kind of like the big picture, like on the parents and the family side, right? So what happens is when parents reach out to me and, like just in general, the coffee conversations are always like, okay, I will make sure my kid gets a straight A, like minimum 4.5 GPA, and make sure that they play at least one sport, they play some sort of music, they get internship, they go into a research, they publish some sort of like research, and they do one extracurricular with, community service in mind, right? Like, so this is a standardized kit that everybody follows. This is a template that almost everybody has now, which is kind of heartbreaking because it's become a cookie cutter thing now, right? So we'll set this, on one side, and let's kind of like take a little bit of a shift and see what colleges want, right? What are colleges really seeking? And this is where maybe I'll hit a mini pause and make sure everything is okay, because I heard a little bit of beep boop on the, okay. Okay, so back again to the presentation.
We actually have a few questions if you would like to go through those.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's do that.
So the first question is, do UCs consider SAT or ACT scores now?
UCs do not consider SAT or ACT score. They have stopped it, and they are very, very particular about it. They will not consider it. Even if you try to put it into your, additional information section and whatnot, it does not give you an edge. It does nothing to your application. They will not consider it. Yeah, period.
Okay, so our next question is, how popular or well-known is IB and Cambridge courses compared to APs, or which is worth more?
So in your school, in your high school, if they offer both AP and IB, right, you get a slightly higher edge with the IB because IBs are technically deemed a little bit more harder than the APs, right? But again, so it's considered in the overall context of, like what major do you want to apply to, and, like does the coursework that you have mapped out, does it relate to that major that you want to go to, right? So everything is viewed within the context of your high school on what's being offered and what you are taking. Yeah, with IB giving you a slight edge.
So the next question is, in which grade is the SAT exam to be passed? Can it be in middle school or high school only?
So you have to do your SAT in high school. If you're applying early, okay, so let's back up. So there's the SAT 8-9, which would be your, kind of like middle school SAT, and then the SAT for the high school, which would be 10-11, right? So once you enter high school, you can pass, you can take the 10-11 SAT, and that's deemed as, what's required for college, right? And you would be good to go anywhere in high school if you take SAT and pass. And another additional piece of information that I want you to know is most colleges actually look at your PSAT score to give you scholarships. Like, for example, USC gives almost full ride, actually full ride even, if you are, one of the national merit scholars or commended scholar, or anywhere in that realm, or, using your PSAT score, right? So SAT is important, but just know that most universities use PSAT for their scholarship offerings. I mean, they do consider SAT too for their merit scholarship offerings, but PSAT is like a big bar for most universities.
And our last question is, are sports weighted under which tier?
Okay, sports is a whole different discussion. If you want to be a recruited athlete, in sports, then it's a whole different conversation, right? Like everything we are showing here will still count, but recruited athlete is a completely different ball game, which is a separate meeting in and of itself, right? But if you are in your school team, if you are a varsity player, if you are, like basically if you're a varsity level player, right, then that would be anywhere between like tier 2 and tier 3, depending on how competitive the sport is, how competitive your school team is, and whatnot, right? And from varsity, if you're recognized at the state level, if you're recognized at the national level, say for example for cross country, right, if you qualify for state, if you qualify for nationals, then that would put you into the tier 2 buckets, right? So that's how school sports and like club sports even are considered. Yeah, but if you're a recruited athlete, it's a different ball game altogether, and you have to approach it completely differently.
Okay, that's all the questions we have for now.
Okay, perfect. Okay, let me switch back to screen share here. So far we were seeing what do parents do, what do students do, like how do they put together a profile, like what a standard profile looks like and whatnot, right? So if you look on the flip side, what do colleges want, right? Who is their dream candidate? It's not like admission officers' only goal is to sit and reject candidates, right? Like their whole goal is to see how can I actually make this candidate fit into my campus, right? They don't want to just like straight out reject applications as they come in. So do they want a well-rounded candidate who's got this like 4.5, plays an instrument, plays some sport, does extracurricular volunteering, does research? Do they want that well-rounded candidate, or how do they go about doing their review of the application, right? So what admission officers do is they review the candidate for fit into their environment, right? Like will this student who's who's got this well-rounded characteristic, will they fit into my college campus? Will they thrive in the culture, in the settings of this campus, right? And will they thrive in the major that they're applied to? Because like either this major is extremely strenuous, in this college, we have a very strong rigor, or this major requires ABCD things, which we don't see this candidate exuding so far in the application, right? So that's what they're checking. And ultimately, and also selfishly for colleges, what they want is, will this student put my college in the world's best list, right? Like, because once you pass out, you're going to be the alumni. Like, will you be the next Steve Jobs, for lack of a better comparison, right? So that's what they want from each candidate that they bring into the campus, right? So they're always assessing fit, fit in terms of like culture, fit in terms of like, caliber, both mental and, like tenacity for, fitting into the major that they choose. And mainly what will they contribute to the campus and what will they contribute to the college itself, right, as an alumni. So what they are trying to do is they want a well-rounded class, right? So the class should be well-rounded and not the student being well-rounded, meaning that in my 2025 batch that, like that admission officers are putting together now, they want the class to be well-rounded in terms of like, oh, I have the student who's, the USA Biology Olympiad winner. Oh, I also have the student who's an amazing painter, and look at the amazing artwork that the student has, churned out, right? So they're making the class well-rounded rather than picking students who are like following that profile that I showed you before. right? Like with straight A's, and I play a sport, I play an instrument, and I do volunteering and community service. I've done my internship. What else do you want me to do, right? So they don't want this cookie cutter template from the students, right, and from all applicants. They want the class to be unique, right? Like bring everybody who are having unique characteristics so that new ideas emerge, so that there's like not an echo chamber of similar ideas, but people have diversity of thinking, and like that's when growth happens, right? So that's what actively admissions officers are doing. I don't know how many of you have friends or family, or like anybody that currently in the senior year, because right now all the admissions results have started to come out, and you can hear people like either they get deferred, or they get admitted, right? So admitted, clearly they have something that makes them unique enough to make the class well-rounded. And if they got deferred, it means that, like we want to see like who else is out there, right? Like what else, like is this student unique enough? Like that's what they're trying to assess now, and that's why that needle didn't move to the admitted status, and that's why they're being deferred, right? So this is key. This is like, if you forget everything else in the presentation, just remember only this, right? And this will help you kind of like curate your, how do you want to put together your high school journey, right? So, oh, I'm getting a call. Hello, sorry, I don't know where I got kicked out. My internet must have been bad.
No problem. Now we can hear you clearly. Please.
Okay, perfect. Let me go back again. I don't know. Did you see the slide on what do colleges want?
If you can show us, we could.
Okay,
see.
all right, sure.
No, we didn't see this one.
This one?
Yes.
This is the one we were going to. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So I was saying, if you forget everything in the presentation today, the only big takeaway that I want you to do is like remember this, right? Because colleges are trying to put together, a well-rounded class rather than a class of well-rounded students, right? So this is the major takeaway. One of the key major takeaways, if you will, for the evening. Yep. Okay. So these are some other kind of like tidbits and notes, that you can see in the admissions office websites of these top universities, where they say, like it's evaluated in many areas, and we are careful to not place weight on one area over the other, right? And this is from Rice University. Harvard, they're saying that, okay, we seek very promising students. While academic accomplishment is important, it is important. They're looking for strong personal qualities, right? Any special talents or excellence of all kinds. And these are the clues that they give, if you will, right? Where you have to try and think, okay, if I'm really, really dying to go to Harvard, how do I show, like my own unique personal quality, right? Like how do I show my special talent, right? And you have to curate your high school life based off of this, right? So do read the websites very thoroughly, right? Most of the information is kind of like point blank in front of you. And if you read it careful enough, you can actually curate your own journey, right? Through high school, and, make high school life a little bit more easier, and then, like a little bit more easier to accomplish your end goal of getting into the college that you want to get into. UCs, they also have something similar on their website. I'm assuming everybody here is from California. Please do go read the 13 factors that the UCs consider in evaluating the applications. That is key to, and they do follow that to the T, right? Like we are given a checklist to actually mark on, okay, like how are the students against these factors, right? So they do follow that to the T. It's very, very important that all of you understand the 13 factors of, how UCs determine admission onto their campuses. And it's like slightly unique for each campus, but they all fall under the 13 categories. Go on the UC website and you can read it. Like all of this is publicly available data, nothing proprietary. So please go read it to familiarize yourself on, like what each colleges that you want to go into are looking for, right? So from where we started, like this cookie cutter template, we all know that it's not going to cut it, right? Colleges will, like, honestly, this has become like a boring template, where everybody is getting good grades, where everybody is doing the same thing, right? Like, it's either this or that, and unfortunately, for lack of a better word, unless you do something unique enough, you're not going to, like, trigger the radar, if you will, right? So what's the answer, right? If you don't want me to do all these great things, then, like, what is the answer? So let's play this, like, mini game, if you will. Maybe a quick Q&A session, and you can, either blurt out your answer or type it out in chat. Because this is very recent. This is as of this month, like with the USC admissions. So I have these are all my students. I did get permission to, to put their stats here, to put all their data here. So between student 1 and student 2, you can read, the weighted GPA, 4.37 and 4.75. One of them is cross-country varsity, and they are a youth mentor at a STEM nonprofit. They also worked as an ice cream scooper at Baskin-Robbins, and they did the SRA program at UCSB, right? That's student 1. Student 2, they have again 4.75. They are softball team captain. They do traveling softball, and then they're the robotics team captain at high school, and they did a USC summer research. So who do you think got into USC? Guesses?
Student 1.
Student 1?
Yeah, everybody says student 1.
Wow. Okay. Yay for student 1. Are you sure? Because student 2 did actually do a research at USC. Like, that's what they did, their summer research.
I don't think so. That's a major criteria. I mean, it does. But now I see a lot of student 2.
So, I mean, at its face value, if you look at this, they're both phenomenal resumes, right? Like, the GPAs are, they're hard to get GPAs, right? Like, they're not easy. They're both doing sport, and they're at, like, their top level, right? And they both did some sort of, like, major summer program, and one of them they did at USC. And maybe I should have given you the clue for, like, what major. They're applying to two different schools, actually. So one of them applied to the Donsep School for cognitive science, and student 2 is applied to the Viterbi Engineering School, right, for biomedical engineering. So maybe that's a clue for who would have got in. Okay, so I won't hold the surprise too long. Student 1 got into USC, and again, many factors kick in, right? They're both very competitive majors. Engineering as well as cognitive science, they're ridiculously competitive majors. And this is where, and yes, they both passed the academic threshold, right? Even though the student who got admitted is of a lower GPA than the student 2, student 2 got deferred, right? Like, USC does not deny in the early action. They got deferred. Even though student 1 has a lower GPA, their essay had a very unique style of writing, and the way they told their story was so unique, right, compared to the other student. And again, like, both of them are my students. They're both very deserving students, but just that essay, I could tell that this student was having that slight edge, through their essay, right? So that's why I'm emphasizing heavily, focus on your essays. They're key differentiator for how you succeed in your college journey. Okay, so let's do this one. Next one, MIT also came out, right? All the early action decisions came out. Let's do student 2 is the same, right? It's the same student. Student 1, so they have a 4.79 weighted GPA. They took 15 dual enrollment courses, and just know that MIT is big on academics, right? Because studying at MIT is hard. So student 1, again, the high school robotics team, they did do a major research publication associated to the major that they were applying to. Who do you think got into MIT?
Student one.
Student one.
Student 1. Okay. Student 2 got into MIT. And again, they're both super deserving. Student 1 is deferred. Student 2 got into MIT. I do encourage you all to go into MIT's admissions website. Actually, every college has a very clear admissions website, right? Either through their blogging or through their website itself. And they explain very clearly on what they expect and what they're looking for in the student, right? You just have to read it and read in between the lines and kind of catch what they're trying to tell you. And you can technically decode this yourself, right? So MIT will say, we don't want people, who can cure cancer or whatever. Even if you make a difference in one person's life, even if you teach math to one kid, that's what we want, right? And that might make a big impact on the kids' lives, right? They want people who care, about the community. And because there are so many resources available at MIT, they want to see how students have used the resources available to them in their high school life, right? And that's going to be a projection of how the student is going to use the numerous resources that's going to be available at MIT and, make something out of it. So your essays have to be catered like that. Even though you may have similar, really competitive and comparable profiles, how do you put together your story, and how do you present yourself makes a lot of difference. Getting here is difficult, right? Just both of them, they are very hard workers. Just getting to this point is very, very hard. And ultimately packaging that into a beautiful kit and putting a bow on it and presenting it, your final application, that does give you an edge. Okay, so I'm just sharing these things with you to again show that the whole college journey is a very highly subjective journey, right? And you can only increase the odds of getting in by knowing these nuances. And every college has its unique nuance that they look at, right? MIT has its, you should know what to tell MIT, otherwise you forget about getting into MIT. And you should know what to tell USC, right? And how do you actually put together your profile for USC starting from 9th grade, right? Or starting from 8th grade even, because these are very competitive schools. And of course, the top tier UCs have also become very, very competitive, right? And they're looking for very specific things in their students, like UCLA and UC Berkeley and UCSD actually, the top 3 tier 1 UCs, they too look for very unique things in their students. And if we did this session after the UC results came out, I would have actually presented that too. And maybe I'll do it through my social media or whatever, right? So just go into each college admission website and read through what they're looking for. Most of the time the answers are right in front of you. And it's just that sometimes you might need that extra help, and that's when they come to us, or any admissions counselors that you may know in the area. Yeah. So net, all of this, it comes down to you just have to be you, right? In your whole high school journey, if you try to replicate somebody, or if you try to kind of mimic somebody else's path, if you try to mimic this, right, like student 2 next year to go to MIT, it's probably not going to work, right? Because again, remember, MIT is looking to have a good mix in the class. The class should be well-rounded, and maybe this student had something which made the class well-rounded, right? So don't duplicate what you had seen, right? Yeah, maybe these work, maybe these don't work next year, right? What you want to do is just be you, be that unique you, right? This one student was adamant that she wants to go work at Baskin Robbins, and she wrote a whole essay about her, work experience at Baskin Robbins just down the street, right? And I feel like that's what gave her the edge, right? So she wanted to do that, right? And so my big emphasis for all of you is, if you want to go do something in high school, just put your heart and soul and pursue it. Sorry, was there a question?
No, I didn't.
Sorry, I got unmuted, so sorry about that.
No problem. So yeah, so put your heart and soul and pursue that, and nothing else will give you a bigger edge than being you in high school, right? Or like being you throughout your life, honestly. And then, the process of putting together an essay and the whole application becomes so much more easier, right? Your thoughts will be more fluid, and then you can present yourself really well in your application, if you're yourself, okay? So I will pause here because the next is, like all about career. So I'm going to take a mini pause. Any questions so far?
We do have quite a few questions.
Hooray. Yes.
So the first one is, can you give me more insight about the PSAT?
Oh, the PSAT is what's called as the preliminary SAT. Actually, people call it different things. It was practice SAT, preliminary SAT, and then even College Board said like, people interpreted it so differently, so we're just going to call it PSAT and leave it open for interpretation. So it's typically the test that students, you could take it in your, it's offered once every year. Typically students take it either in their 10th grade or in their 11th grade. It's the last week of October. It's typically the last week of October, or like maybe early November if things get pushed out. So 10th or 11th, right? If you want to, and most students apply, in their 12th grade to colleges. Some students want to skip their 12th grade because they have done, all the requirements and they don't have anything else to study. So if you want to apply in your 11th grade to colleges, then you take your PSAT in 10th grade. But if you want to apply, like the regular, most of the students, then you take your PSAT in the 11th grade. If you're super ambitious, you can take it a year ahead.
Our next question is, does orchestra carry any weightage in the application?
Yes, yeah. Everything makes up, who you are, right? So don't think that doing one thing is better than the other thing. So if music is your thing, right, like just dedicate to it, go for it. Like for example, my son, he loves music. He practices music like almost 30 hours a week, right? And he's in every band and every orchestra possible, and that's the only thing he does. So if that's what he likes, that's what he likes, right? It does carry weight, because just like sports, being in music is also a huge time commitment, and admissions officers know that if you have to dedicate so much time for music and if you're still getting good grades, again, remember you have to pass the academic threshold to be even considered for the next kind of like your extracurriculars and essays and recommendations. So if you are doing well, if you pass the academic threshold, and if you're doing all these, like time intensive extracurriculars, they do make an impact. And in music itself, if you win competitive awards, that gives you more edge. Yeah.
If the student hasn't taken SAT yet in junior year, do you still recommend to take it?
The student hasn't taken SAT in junior year?
Yes.
It depends. If you only want to apply to the UCs, and if you want to save time, don't take the SAT, right? Like if UCs only is your goal. But if you want to apply to other schools, actually, even last year, most schools kept SAT, ACT as optional because of the COVID era. Now everybody wants to see the SAT, ACT score because that's kind of like the only standardized thing that the admissions officers have, right? In the context of like a national evaluation, right? Because it's the same test that everybody across the country takes. But on the contrary, if you see things like your GPA, right? Your AP scores, your honors scores, that's very subjective to your school, right? Like one school might evaluate the students much more leniently than another school, right? So a 4.5 across the country doesn't mean the same in terms of GPA. So admissions officers would actually love to see the SAT, ACT score because it's a more standardized test, right? That's why they're called standardized tests. So you do get a slight advantage, having a good SAT score. I should have put the SAT scores for the students too in the presentation. The one who got into USC has a 1540, and then the one who got into MIT has a 1570 SAT score. Yeah. So yes, please take your SAT. I would recommend, if you're looking for colleges other than the UCs, definitely take the SAT score.
Can Tamil language be considered for bilingual credit for high school and college students? If yes, how can we enroll for Tamil?
Not that I know of. It's still not one of the language other than English. Again, not that I know of, but I've heard some folks say that yes, they have used it for second language credit. I don't know, like not that I know of, and to my knowledge, not so.
If you can touch upon the transfer into UCs after a year of community college using the TAC program, it would be great.
Okay, so transfer admissions is a whole other discussion, right? So at a high level, yes, you can transfer. You can transfer from community colleges to the UCs, and there's like a whole articulation agreement that the UCs have with community colleges. You have to meet certain credit limit. You have to meet certain course requirement to be eligible for transferring. It's a whole separate discussion, actually. Yeah. So I'm just assuming this is just like all first year applicants, and we'll focus this one just on the first year thing. But yes, you can transfer.
Are there any impacts of Scout and city volunteering efforts for this application?
Efforts for city volunteering, and what was the previous one?
Scout.
Scout? I don't know what that is.
Like you go outdoor camping and you get the badges, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, Boy Scouts? Like
Yeah.
Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Scouting?
Yeah.
And see, any extracurricular is an extracurricular, right? So colleges, when they look at extracurricular, they're going, okay, what are you doing outside of school with all your time in hand? How do you use it, right? Whether you go scouting, whether you go camping, whether you go like selling cookies door to door, that's your wish, right? And when the application comes back, when the admissions officers are reading the application, it gives them an understanding of like how would you spend your time that you have in hand when you're not studying, when you're not in school, right? So, and if that's the image that you want to project of you, yes, please do, right? Like if you really love scouting for whatever reason, right? Project it and write about it and be proud about it, and write it in a way so that people see your enthusiasm. Yeah.
What is the SAT score majority of colleges are looking for? Is there any cutoff?
There's no cutoff for SAT. Just like how I said, there's an academic threshold, right? So, like for example, HyperConnect, every year we collect the data, of what was the average score for the UCLA, UCSB, like all the UC admissions, for the Ivy admissions, for literally almost like 2,000 colleges across the country. We consolidate like what's the like the average admit score, what is the average SAT ACT score, like and the cost of attendance and whatnot, so that we have that data, right? So there's no specific cutoff for SAT, right? But of course IVs, the higher the SAT, the better, but they don't really have a cutoff per se. But if you go into, if you need access to this data, you could actually go into, there's something called common data set. So by law, every college is required to publish this to the government, right? So if you go into common data set and search up for your college, right? Like say if you want to go to MIT and say MIT common data set, it will show everything. It will show you, like the average GPA, the average SAT, the average class size, everything, all the data is in there. Yeah, but there's no cutoff. They don't actually, like there's no set cutoff for SAT.
Do you recommend doing a senior project in high school, and when and how do we enter that into college applications? The presentations are normally in the second semester.
A senior project in high school, meaning like for your like AP seminar and project presentation? I don't understand the question actually.
Could you please elaborate whoever wrote the question?
Actually, the senior project, it's like optional, but do you recommend doing it? Because some people do it and like some people don't in our school, and it's like,
Okay. So if it's some project to fulfill a credit requirement for a particular course that you're taking, yes, please go ahead and do it. But otherwise,
no, it's not like for it's not for any course or like any club or anything. It's like just in general.
Okay. I don't know. It seems like specific thing for your school. So I mean, if you're passionate about it, go ahead and pursue it, right? But if it's something that's not speaking to you, don't waste your time, is my general advice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But like my other kind of question, I guess, is like, even though we know that we're going to do it, like the presentation and like the senior project, and that's in the second semester, so like how I said previously, can I still like write it on my application that I'm doing it and like kind of write about it?
Okay, so if you don't mind, like maybe because there are tons of questions coming through, and then I have, like few more slides to go through. If you don't mind, I can answer that offline, or you could email me and we could cover that. Because, yeah, let's do maybe like 3 more questions, and then let me finish my presentation, and then we'll hop back again for questions.
Okay.
Got it, okay. Do all the AP subjects have college credit?
No.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, they don't. And you can actually go into each college and find out if that college offers you credit for that AP that you're taking. You see specifically, not all APs transfer, and it differs by campus, by major, and you have to get 3, 4, or 5. Or about 3 for some APs, about 4 for some APs, for some majors, for some campus. So it's very specific by campus, by major, by the AP.
And our last question, with the evolution of Gen AI, how do the college admissions officers detect AI written college essays compared to human written essays?
Yeah. So they do have, the AI checkers, if you will. But in speaking with the college admissions officers, they said that, we have a lot of like false negatives or like false positives, right? Which is triggering a lot of confusion. So, yes, they do put it through the checker. If there's a big flag, then, it's kind of like a straight out reject. But if it's like false positive, false negative, then what they do is the admission officers, it's their discretion. If they feel like, I don't know if this was written by the student or by AI, they have actually, have had students come in and write something in front of them. So you write on the spot, and they check, how that essay compares with what was there. Granted, it's very hard to write under pressure in the moment, so they do cut you some slack. But I've seen colleges ask the students to write another essay if they feel like that's something not human in their essay. And actually, honestly, if you see AI written essays, you can see that it's actually too perfect. Like no human writes like that, right? And also another big saying in college admissions world is, if you are a very good writer, you're kind of like screwed a little bit, because like not a lot of high schoolers can write perfectly, right? Like while they're still in high school, right? So people do catch it, like when people read it, when admissions officers read it, they do see that, I don't think this is human written. Yeah. Okay, back to the presentation. Okay, so career is a big question, right? And again, this is a huge topic. For the sake of this evening, I've curated this to like a smaller discussion, right? And these are career conversations that parents and families should be taking and having right now. I am personally not a fan of these online career assessment tools. Like I know some counselors follow it. I just don't believe in it. I will not use it with my students. What I truly believe in is like understanding what the students' strengths are, right? Like, okay, having a strength-based discussion with them. Granted, it's very hard for, a teenager to know what their strengths are and also have that kind of conversation with the family. And that's where, like counselors like me kick in. And, like giving them an opportunity to explore different career potentials and, like whatnot, and actually how to work with them, to get to kind of like the career that they want to go to, like how does the educational journey look like, right? So these are the things that we have to map out. So simple things that parents can do at home, if you can. Again, I know it's very hard. It's very hard having teenagers open up and, like have that kind of clarity. career conversation is a long conversation. It's one of the first things that I do with students, right? Like even the ones that got into MIT and USC, for example, they didn't know that, coming in that they were like, oh, I want to be this engineer, or like, I want to be this cognitive scientist. They did not know coming in, right? So it's a process of getting there, right? But parents, few tips that I want to give you is, what are your short and long-term goals, right? Like, have you started to think about that? If they haven't, please ask them to start thinking about that, right? And students who are listening to this, right, like start thinking about, okay, what are my short-term and long-term goals, right? Like after I finish high school, where do I see myself, right? And then after I finish college, where do I see myself? Okay, if they already have a career in mind, like what is it? Like, what about that career is interesting to them, right? And how do they even know that's the career that's of interest to them? Is it just that they heard that name and they think that like, oh, biomedical engineering sounds very cool, I'm going to go try that? Or do they have a true understanding of like what that career actually means, right? And that's where the biggest gap is. And I'll tell you, 90% of the students who come in to say that they want to be doctors, they all say they want to be pediatricians, until I tell them that pediatricians get, are kind of like one of the lowest paid doctors, actually lowest paid, undergrad, like graduates, if you will, right? And then they go like, oh, sorry, no longer wanting to be a pediatrician, right? So they have to have a true understanding of what their career means, right? Again, compared to their short and long-term goals. And then ask them questions like, okay, where do you see yourself from 5 years, right? And then beyond that, like what not, right? And then using all of this, then that's where we put together the, somebody asked a question about the community college transfer, right? So is this a 2-year thing or is this a 4-year thing? How does our educational journey look like? And you start mapping that out, okay? Career conversation, it's a much, again, this is another session. It's a much longer conversation. And it takes, like during the engagement, like students who have worked, with me, with HyperConnect, during our engagement, the first 2 months, we actually spend a lot of time on understanding, okay, what career would be best for that individual, right? Because you have to be careful about like what you're signing up for. And that's why I don't believe in all these like online career assessments. They're just like a bunch of questionnaires, and I don't believe in them, but you're welcome to go try them if you believe in such things. Just search up online, like free career assessment tools. Holland Code is one that's pretty popular. Many counselors use it that I know, and they speak very highly of it. I am not an advocate of online tools at all. So with respect to career, my word of advice to everybody, I don't know if you guys recognize who these two phenomenal gentlemen are. I would love to see, I don't know, like, do you want to type in the chat? Let's see, let's pause here. I really want to know if you guys know, I mean, if students are in the chat or in the meeting. They're two phenomenal, like big newsmakers, if you will, right? And they have two highly unique careers. Feel free to chime in chat. I'll go back to presentation. I don't want to be a buzzkill. But the gentleman on the left, I don't know if you heard all about the game Go, right? Actually, I have it here. And this was not by design at all. This just happened to be on my desk. So this game of Go, which is a very popular, very, very popular game. So Demis Hassabis, the gentleman on the left, so he built this company, DeepMind, which built the AI, which actually beat the world's top leading Go player, Lisa Dahl. I strongly encourage all of you to please go watch that YouTube, right? That should be your Saturday night movie, right? There's a whole documentary. It won the best documentary. So Demis Hassabis, so he's an AI pioneer, right? And that's the career he wanted. Like from a young age, he played chess. He wanted to do algorithms. He was a mathematician. And then that's his route, right? So that's the career that he wanted. And the gentleman on the right, one of my all-time favorite authors, Yuval Noah Harari. He's a historian, and he has been counseling all the executives, the Silicon Valley executives, right? And everybody goes to him on, okay, we're building all this crazy AI, lay some insight on, from history, where is this headed, right? So as long as you're clear on what career you want to pursue, you can become pioneers in your field. And I'm sharing this because I know that everybody wants to do only STEM these days, right? And I'm an engineer, I'm a big advocate of STEM, and I run a non-profit on STEM. STEM is important, but just because you don't like STEM, it doesn't mean that your career is not going to go anywhere, right? And like, look at this amazing historian, and he's like, everybody should read his book, The Sapiens, right? And he has released many more books, right? So at minimum, Sapiens is a highly recommended book, which I think everybody should read, right? And that's the kind of career that you want to build for yourself, for your kids, and just trying to understand, okay, like, what do I want to do, short term, long term, where am I seeing myself headed? If you want to be the next great historian, right, the next great anthropologist, be so, right? And put together your high school experience according to that. And that's my word of advice, with respect to career. And we can go on and on and on about this. I'll quickly jump to the next big topic, just 2 more slides, and then we can do more Q&A. College is expensive, right? There's no denying that. And it's not like you will not get any money. There are options to get money. I studied for almost free at USC, so there is possibility to get fully funded education. PSAT, for example, like I said, that's one avenue. I just want to walk you through how, like the financial resources, how the financial aid is structured. There are 4 major categories, if you will, right, in financial aid. The first one is the federal government provided money. This comes through grants, basically the Pell Grant, the Federal Work Study Program, and then there are different loans that the federal government offers, right? And then, the state government, they do offer, like from a state level, for example, if you're in California, there's a Cal Grants program, right? And then the colleges and the universities themselves, they give grants and they give scholarships, right? And these are what's called as like broadly need-based and merit-based, right? So that's specifically from the colleges and universities. Then, of course, there's like a whole gamut of private scholarships. Everybody should have known about the Gates Scholarship, the Coca-Cola Scholarship, right? Like all these big, very big to very small, like, $200, $500 scholarships, right? So these are all types of financial aid that you could avail. Once your student is kind of like admitted, you get a financial, aid letter, like the financial letter from each college. Say that congratulations, you're admitted, and then boom, like here's your this is what your financial aid package is, looking like, right? So it could be a composition of any of these, right? And what are the types of aid, right? So the left-hand side, it's purely merit-based aid, where it's based on like because of your merit, your academics, your special talent, or your skill. Because of pure merit, you get that money. Okay, not all colleges give you merit-based aid. Actually, many colleges don't give you merit-based aid. Okay, so if you early on in your college journey, if you don't want to spend money, too much money out of your pocket, then you have to be careful about picking schools to apply to. Because if you apply to a college that does not offer you merit-based scholarship, then even after you get admitted, it's going to be heartbreaking to reject that college, especially if it's a top coveted college. Okay, so just know that most colleges don't offer merit-based scholarships. Okay, and then on the right hand side is the column of like need-based scholarships or money, right? And these come in different forms. Just because you have a need, colleges just don't go like, okay, here you go, take all the money, right? It doesn't work like that. So the need-based award is again further categorized into like 3 buckets, if you will, right? Like one is through grants. You don't have to repay the money. So grants, colleges have the money because, like they've received an endowment from their sponsors, right? Like some, rich CEO or whoever has given money to the college. So there's money to spend now, which I can spend on these need-based students, right? And then colleges do encourage students to take loans. There are federal, state, some colleges provide loans themselves. The federal student direct plus, the parent plus, there are so many types of loans. Again, that's a whole different conversation, and it's more specific for seniors. So there's loans that go into, like fulfilling the need aid, And then there's work study, right? So the money that the student earns, again, that's the money that they earn, right? Which again goes back to paying their tuition, right? So these are kind of like the compositions of like how you can pay for college, right? And how need and merit, like merit-based scholarships and grants and loans work. Again, like I said, this is a much more deeper conversation. My piece of advice is, if you're researching colleges and if you don't want to shell too much money from your pocket, just rule out the colleges that don't offer merit-based scholarship, unless you do qualify for Pell or Cal Grants or whatnot. Okay, so that's kind of like the last slide that I had. So now is when we can switch over to questions. We can start populating more questions here. I can stop sharing.
Okay. So, based on your experience, what's the percentage of students to go outside UCs in California?
My students or just students in general?
Your students, I'm assuming.
Oh, yeah, if they get into MIT, I'm very sure where they're going, right? It really depends, actually. It has actually changed year over year. And also, if you look at the California trend, and again, all this data is publicly available, you just have to go search. UCs are also not admitting as many California students, compared to what they were doing like 10 years ago. So if it's a good school, if they have decent scholarships, yes, they do choose schools outside of the UCs. For what it's worth, I'm a big advocate of, like exploring outside of California.
Is it possible to give a separate talk on community college route to USC, since it seems it needs separate attention?
Community college to USC may be really challenging. Community college to UCs is possible, right? Like there's a clear path. Community colleges to private schools is also possible, though there's like only a very small fraction that they admit into private schools. But community colleges to the UCs, yes, I'll do my best, to see if we can schedule another conversation on that,
How many extracurriculars and awards can we enter for UC applications?
Okay, so in the UC application, there are 20 sections, if you will, right? Or like 20 tiles where you can actually punch in either your extracurriculars or your awards. It doesn't mean that you have to fill in all 20. Most of my students don't go more than 10, 15 at max, right? Because you want to write the things that you have spent most time on, rather than saying, like 2 hours a week I went jogging. It doesn't really make that much of a difference. But yeah, so UCs, you have 20 options to enter for extracurriculars and awards and honors. In the Common App, which is for almost all the other colleges, Common App it gives you 10 spaces for extracurriculars and then 5 for honors and awards. So 15 versus 20 for the UCs. Yeah.
Please recommend some sites or companies who accept high school interns that are non-paid.
There are plenty out there. I can consolidate and maybe like send it to Ms. Karthika, and then she can publish it out to all of you. Yeah.
H4 students who have H-1B visa parents are not eligible for educational loans, and they are considered for non-residential educational fee within same state itself. Is it so? Any suggestions for this?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. There's not a lot of like educational loan and leeway. They're unfortunately considered as international students. In H-1Bs is a slightly different conversation. But to answer your question, unfortunately not considered for like all the federal loans and grants. Yeah.
The next question is, research is something that I am interested in. Is it a good extracurricular?
Research?
Yes.
Yeah, if you like research, yes, go for it, right? There's nothing wrong in doing research. It's just that when you present your research in your, through your college application, make sure it kind of like ties into your interest, your passion, and admissions officers are able to see that, right? Like, oh, I know why the student is wanting to do research in this space. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, go for it.
The next question is when to start applying for scholarships.
When to start applying? Okay, so you can actually apply for scholarships as early as 9th grade if you meet certain criterias, believe it or not, right? So from 9th grade all the way till you graduate from college, you can apply for scholarships.
Do you have any good websites or resources for merit-based scholarships?
Okay, so merit-based scholarships that are provided by the college, the college FAA and the college admissions officers work on that together. Okay, so that comes directly through the college. And then all the private scholarships, they have their own criteria for who they want to award the scholarship to, and even who would qualify for the scholarship, right? Like, so they will have cutoffs like minimum GPA and, like they should have done A, B, C, D. So there are like cutoffs or like criterias from private institutions. So, but the merit-based scholarships for the colleges will come from the colleges directly.
Would you mind giving us some intern programs, ideas, and resources to apply to?
Sure, I would love to. Everything should be in the context of, if you want to intern at Hyperconnect, I'm actually looking for interns this summer. And I can pass on details to Ms. Kartika again. So if you want to intern for my company, yes, please do. Everything should be in the context of like, what do you want to do, right? So from your career perspective, and then from the major that you want to apply to in college, and then how does all your internship and activities tie into that major, right? Like everything should be connected. Like you don't want to be a social media intern if your interest is like anthropology, or no, maybe it might work actually. If your interest is in like computer science, like why do you want to be a social media intern, right? So yeah, as long as it's tied to your interest, yes.
Are there any programs to identify the best suitable career paths?
Any programs to identify? Honestly, like I said, I'm not a believer, and I think, and if I can take a leap of faith and say, all the programs and online tools that are available out there, I don't think they do a justifiable job of enabling students to identify the career that's right for them, and also being able to project what the careers, future best careers would look like, right? So yeah, unfortunately, I don't know. If you can try Hall and Code, and there are a few more out there. Yeah, I'm happy to send it to Ms. Kartika, but yeah, I don't recommend anything actually. Yeah.
The next question is asking about healthcare internships.
There are tons of healthcare internships actually. Depending on your area, there are many options out there. So if you want more specifics, feel free to email. I'm happy to post my email and my phone number. Or you, of course, go through Ms. Kartika. Yeah.
I actually have a question for you.
Yes. That's my email.
I'm interested in the healthcare field.
Yes.
And I was wondering, are shadowing programs have much value, like shadowing a doctor, compared to like a summer internship research program? Because what I've noticed with shadowing programs is you don't learn much from these programs due to a lot of the laws and regulations. It's just a lot of watching and listening, but not even much listening either, since you're not allowed inside the room.
Yeah. Everything depends, right? So, I don't want to be quoted out of context here. It really depends. There is value in shadowing because, arguably you guys are all in high school, right? You do learn by shadowing, right? Like whether you shadow a doctor or a AI scientist, or an engineer, a semiconductor manufacturer like me, right? There is value in shadowing. So yes, please do go shadow. But how many hours you spend shadowing, I would work on that. If you get into a good summer program, yes, I would focus that over the other one, right? So I wouldn't rule out shadowing altogether because that's where you pick up knowledge about the career. If somebody is actually, kind enough to offer you an opportunity to, shadow, take it. But don't just do only that, because again, if the barrier to entry is low, then that means that extracurricular is not really going to give you a competitive advantage, right? So just use that as a thumb rule, right? So when I say if the barrier to entry is low, it's relatively easier to find a shadowing opportunity, right? So don't put all your eggs in that shadowing basket, like, oh, I had 300 hours of shadowing this doctor, right? Because the barrier to entry is low. But definitely take up the opportunity because it's a learning opportunity for high schoolers. Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course.
So the next question, if you are in a dual enrolled program without AP classes, should you still study for the AP tests?
If you are in a dual enrollment, say the
at
question.
At a community college.
Okay.
If you are dual enrolled at a community college without AP classes, but you're taking the intro courses in that college,
okay,
should you still study and take the AP test for those courses?
Okay, I'm actually not understanding the question clearly, because the community college will offer the course that they're offering and you give the exam and you get the grades from the community college, right? Like AP courses, are you taking the AP course in the community college?
Usually, I think what they're trying to say is a lot of the introductory courses, like Introduction to Biology, is very similar to the AP Biology curriculum in their community college.
I see. Okay, so again, it depends on two things. One, like if you're trying to bump up your unweighted GPA, then yes, your AP courses helps you bump up your, weighted GPA. And then if you're trying to transfer these credits, then yes, taking AP courses matter. And then 3, not all intro courses are the same as AP courses, right? Like intro in community college maybe slightly less rigor than AP courses, but then the deeper you go into the courses in community college, they may be higher than the AP courses, right? So it depends on course by course basis, actually.
Do community colleges, or do the colleges you're applying to, consider this in your GPA or consider this in the rigor you take when you take these extra community college classes?
Yes, so you do have an option to plug in, like the extra courses that you've taken. They are considered for, like the rigor, and also community colleges have the bonus of like being able to transfer, especially to the UCs. Yeah.
Can internships be done by H4 students?
Yes.
Are paid internships considered by colleges?
Absolutely. Actually, paid internships have more weight than unpaid internships, right? So again, if you're really good, please come. I'm going to give you a paid internship at HyperConnect. So yeah.
I think they mean internships where you pay.
Yeah. So yeah, you get paid, right?
No, you pay to be in the program.
My question, no, I asked if we pay for we pay for a program and take the program in colleges.
Oh.
Like Cosmos, if you, for example, UCs have Cosmos, which costs like $4,000, like that. I'm asking,
Got it. Yeah. So competitive summer programs for which you pay, some of the big ones like Cosmos is definitely worth it, right? UCs do consider you favorably if you do Cosmos. And then there are other programs, which Stanford offers, which you pay and take. These are very competitive to get into, right? So those are valuable. But I do know that like some counselors, if you pay them money, they put you in internships, right? And all applications that we've seen, they all have the same companies where these students have interned. Then that's a flag for the admissions officers going like, oh, this student went to this counselor and that's where they're doing research in this lab and that's where they're having internship in this area, right? So that's a flag. So don't work with counselors who put you in internships if you pay them. That's a red flag for all applications. Sorry, yes.
Yeah. Can colleges consider if a student does an intern or volunteer hours abroad?
Okay, so we do see this more often times, especially with students of Indian origin, students of like Chinese, Taiwanese origin. They go back to their kind of like home country and do internships. It's actually viewed in context, to be honest. Yeah, because again, I think the barrier to entry for that is not as high so it's not given the same amount of weightage, right? Again, this is viewed in context, like it's not the same thing.
Called me, and his dad was there. They're asking, do you need an extra in assessment? Sir, because Avicii's team, they use two of them side by side.
Sorry.
But they're using different architecture, and that architecture allows them to use.
Is that a question for us?
No, sorry. Can you please mute yourself? Thank you.
Next question. For computer science and computer engineering, how could I talk about personal programming projects I have done on my own for fun? Could I do it in a prompt about passion?
Yes, please. Yeah, those are the kinds of things that they want to see, right? Especially if you're a computer science aspirant. Those are the stories that people want to read. Yes, please. Yeah, and there are many prompts that you can pick and choose to answer that.
And another person asked, do I count as an international student when applying to colleges if I have an H4 visa?
Yes.
And can high schoolers do self-study AP classes if the schools don't offer those AP classes?
Yes, you can. Yeah, many students have. Yeah.
How useful is an IB compared to an AP?
How useful?
Yes.
Okay, so IB, it's a little bit more rigorous than the AP, right? So if your school offers IB and if you want to take it, right? Everything is within context, and we have to, I don't want to peanut butter and say, oh, this is better than that or that's better than this. It's actually within context, so we need to go a little bit more deeper, to answer the AP IB question.
To avail educational benefits, can H4 students apply for F1 visa from here, or do they need to go to India to apply the F1 visa?
Okay, this is a longer conversation. There are a lot of situation specifics on this one, so I'm going to park this one for later. It's a much longer conversation. The whole H4, F1, depending on where you are in your, your GC processing, depending on how much time what part of your high school you studied here, if you spent all of it or part of it here, all of these things go into deciding, how your application is reviewed, how your loans and grants are reviewed, all those things, right? So it's a much longer conversation, unfortunately.
How do self-study AP classes affect your weighted GPA?
So you enroll in the AP, it goes into the transcript, so it would affect it the same way that it would if the school is offering it.
Should a computer science major do IB if the school offers computer science related IB courses?
It's not a question of should you do it, right? Again, nobody's forcing you to take any courses, right? You can take just college level, the minimum, CP level courses and just cruise through it. Definitely, there's more weight for honors, and then there's more weight for AP, IB, and then, the additional dual enrollment and community college courses that you do, right? Again, it's not a should. If you want to do it, if you feel like the IB courses are going to be helpful for you, go for it.
And then the next question is just asking for a special H4
we're going to set aside the okay. So we have a request for H4 sessions, and then we have a request for the community college sessions, right? Yeah, let me see. Yeah.
How many average community volunteering hours are expected by colleges?
Colleges don't expect anything in terms of community volunteering, right? But if you're truly passionate about community volunteering, then do volunteer, right? And show that passion in your application. If you're just doing it for the sake of, like a PVSA, right? I can't tell you how many times I've seen students have PVSA awards. Nowadays, everybody and their grandmother is getting a PVSA award, right? There's silver, bronze, gold. I got, these 3 years, right? So if you're truly passionate about serving, go for it and let it show on your application. Colleges don't mandate community service hours. Some schools require students to have community service hours, and if it's a school requirement, fulfill it for your school credit.
would you recommend for community hours when you break it down? Should it be in a variety of areas, or should you focus on one establishment or one area and kind of create like get some nice positions in that branch?